In the heart of Mississippi lies a small town called Starkville. Its charm is unassuming, a place of quiet streets lined with tall oak trees, where neighbors wave as they pass and children ride bikes down dusty lanes. At first glance, Starkville appears like any other peaceful southern town, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. But in 2003, the peace was shattered, and the town became the stage for a haunting tragedy, a story of betrayal, manipulation, and innocence lost. This is the story of Tyler Edmonds, a 13-year-old boy whose unwavering trust in his sister led him into a nightmare no child should ever endure. It is a story that reminds us of the devastating power of manipulation and the resilience required to reclaim the truth. On the surface, Tyler Edmonds was an ordinary boy. He loved reading, playing video games, and spending time with his family. But one bond stood out above the rest: his relationship with his older sister, Kristi Fulgham. To Tyler, Kristi wasn't just a sibling, she was his protector, his role model, and the person he admired most in the world. But in May of 2003, this bond of love and trust would be weaponized against him. Tyler's life would take a turn that no one could have foreseen, and the ripple effects of that fateful month would haunt him forever. Mother's Day, a time for celebration, for love, for families coming together. But in the Fulgham household, the day carried a far darker tone. That morning, Joey Fulgham, Kristi's husband, was found dead in their home. His body lay cold, lifeless, and riddled with the devastating evidence of violence. The sound of a single gunshot had ended his life and set the wheels of a tragic chain of events in motion. Joey was well known in the community, a man with flaws but one who loved his children deeply. To many, his death came as a shock. But for those who knew the Fulghams well, the cracks in Joey and Kristi's marriage were no secret. Kristi had publicly aired her grievances, even appearing on national television to voice her frustrations. Their home, once a place of warmth, had turned into a battleground of arguments, mistrust, and simmering resentment. At first, investigators turned their attention to Kristi. Her volatile relationship with Joey, her frequent public complaints, and her behavior after the murder made her a prime suspect. But just as the investigation seemed to narrow its focus, Kristi dropped a bombshell. She accused her younger brother, Tyler, of committing the crime. To those who knew the family, the accusation was shocking. How could a boy as young as Tyler, barely a teenager, be responsible for something so horrific? The answer would soon unravel, exposing a web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that no one saw coming. Tyler Edmonds was no criminal. At 13 years old, he was a boy who still clung to the innocence of childhood. He spent his days playing with friends, exploring the woods near his home, and writing in his journal where he often described his dreams of becoming someone his family could be proud of. When Tyler was called to the sheriff's office to answer what he thought were routine questions, he was nervous but cooperative. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The police separated Tyler from his mother, isolating him in an interrogation room. For hours, they questioned him, pressuring him to admit to something he didn't do. Beside him sat Kristi, the sister he trusted more than anyone else in the world. Her presence should have been a source of comfort, but instead, it became his undoing. Kristi leaned in close, her voice low but urgent. "Tyler, she said, "they're going to come after me. You have to help me. You have to tell them it was you." She promised him that everything would be fine, that as a minor, he wouldn't face any real consequences. "You'll save me," she whispered. And Tyler, desperate to protect his sister, did as she asked. In that moment, Tyler's life was no longer his own. He confessed to a crime he didn't commit, believing he was saving his sister. But what Tyler didn't realize was that Kristi's motives were far from selfless. She wasn't trying to protect him, she was using him as a pawn in her twisted game of self-preservation. Tyler Edmonds' confession became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Despite his age, despite the glaring inconsistencies between his statement and the evidence, the wheels of justice moved forward, crushing Tyler under their weight. What followed was a harrowing journey through a flawed justice system, a fight for survival, and an unrelenting quest for the truth. But as we delve deeper into Tyler's story, one question lingers: how could the trust of a young boy be so easily betrayed? And what does it take to reclaim a life stolen by lies? This is not just the story of a boy wrongfully accused, it's a story of resilience, of love turned to betrayal, and of the unyielding power of truth. Welcome to the tragic case of Tyler Edmonds. In the quiet town of Starkville, Mississippi, life moved at a slow, steady pace. But everything changed on May 11, 2003, Mother's Day. What should have been a day of celebration became the start of a dark chapter, marked by violence and betrayal. The tragedy that unfolded in the Fulgham household would not only devastate a family but also set in motion a harrowing journey for a 13-year-old boy. Joey Fulgham was found dead that morning in the bedroom of his home. He had been shot in the back of the head while he slept, a cold and calculated act that left no room for survival. The scene inside the house was grim. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the murmurs of investigators piecing together what had happened. Joey's body lay still, the once vibrant father and husband reduced to a lifeless figure. His blood stained the pillow beneath him, a stark reminder of the violence that had ended his life. To the outside world, Joey was a flawed but decent man, a father who loved his children and a husband trying to navigate the challenges of marriage. But inside the walls of this house, his life had been cut short in the most brutal of ways. The investigation quickly turned its focus to Joey's wife, Kristi Fulgham. The couple's marriage had been far from perfect, with arguments and accusations spilling into the public eye. Kristi had even appeared on national television, airing her grievances about their relationship to anyone who would listen. Neighbors whispered about the frequent fights, the loud arguments that would echo through the quiet streets late at night. Joey's friends described him as a man trying to hold his family together, while Kristi seemed determined to pull it apart. To the investigators, Kristi's history and behavior made her an obvious suspect. But Kristi was ready with a story, one that no one expected. In a shocking twist, she pointed the finger at her own younger brother, Tyler Edmonds. The accusation sent shockwaves through the small community. How could a 13-year-old boy commit such a heinous act? And why would Kristi implicate her own sibling? Tyler Edmonds was an ordinary boy, kind-hearted, shy, and eager to please. He looked up to Kristi, his older sister, with the wide-eyed admiration that only a younger sibling can have. So, when the police arrived at his home, asking him to come down to the station to answer a few questions, Tyler didn't hesitate. He trusted the adults around him. He trusted Kristi. At the sheriff's office, Tyler found himself alone, separated from his mother and left to face the intimidating world of law enforcement. The bright fluorescent lights of the interrogation room buzzed overhead as officers began their questioning. At first, Tyler answered honestly, insisting he knew nothing about the crime. But as the hours dragged on, the atmosphere in the room grew colder, the questions sharper. And then, Kristi leaned in. Her voice was soft, almost comforting, as she whispered to her brother. "Tyler," she said, "they think I did this. If you don't help me, I'm going to go to jail. You're just a kid, they won't do anything to you. Just tell them it was you. It's the only way to save me." Tyler's world began to unravel. He didn't understand the full weight of what she was asking, but he couldn't bear the thought of his sister in trouble. He nodded, tears streaming down his face, and told the officers what they wanted to hear. Tyler's confession was heartbreaking to watch. His words didn't match the physical evidence, but the officers didn't seem to care. They had what they needed: a confession from the boy who would become their scapegoat. For Tyler, this moment marked the end of his childhood. In his mind, he was protecting his sister, fulfilling the role of the loyal little brother. But in reality, he was walking into a trap, a carefully laid plan by Kristi to save herself at any cost. The arrest of Tyler Edmonds set the stage for a trial that would captivate the nation. It was a case filled with lies, betrayal, and the manipulation of a boy who should have been protected. But Tyler's story was far from over. The truth had yet to emerge, and the fight for justice was only just beginning. When we think of betrayal, it's often distant: a friend who breaks a promise, a colleague who betrays trust. But for Tyler Edmonds, betrayal came from the one person he trusted most in the world, his sister, Kristi Fulgham. What began as a sibling bond built on admiration turned into a nightmare of manipulation, deceit, and ultimate betrayal. This is the story of how love and loyalty were weaponized against a vulnerable boy, and how Kristi's cold calculations forever altered Tyler's life. Growing up, Tyler idolized Kristi. She was more than just an older sister, she was his protector, his confidant, and in many ways, his second mother. With a 9-year age gap between them, Kristi had always played the role of the guiding figure in Tyler's life. She knew how to make him laugh when he was sad, how to boost his confidence when he felt small. In Tyler's eyes, Kristi could do no wrong. She was his hero. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect sibling relationship was a darker reality, one that would reveal itself in the most devastating way possible. To understand Kristi's betrayal, we must first understand Kristi herself. By the time she reached adulthood, her life was already marred by turmoil. Kristi had a history of reckless decisions, tumultuous relationships, and a knack for finding trouble. Her marriage to Joey Fulgham was no exception. From the outside, their relationship seemed picture perfect, a young couple trying to build a life together. But behind closed doors, their marriage was a battlefield. Joey's frustrations with Kristi's spending habits and alleged infidelities clashed with her growing dissatisfaction with their life. The love they once shared eroded into bitterness and resentment. By the time 2003 rolled around, Kristi was desperate. Joey's life insurance policy, valued at over $100,000, became her way out of the marriage. But the only way to access that money was through Joey's death. To Kristi, the solution seemed simple: eliminate Joey and collect the payout. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed someone to take the fall, someone who would never suspect her true intentions. That's when her mind turned to Tyler. Tyler was the perfect pawn. At 13, he was young, impressionable, and eager to please. Kristi knew how much he adored her, and she used that love to her advantage. She spun a web of lies, convincing Tyler that the only way to protect her was to confess to a crime he didn't commit. What Tyler didn't know was that Kristi had already set her plan into motion. She had pulled the trigger herself. On the night of May 11, 2003, Joey Fulgham was shot while he slept. Kristi, the mastermind behind the act, wasted no time putting her plan into action. She called Tyler the next day, weaving a story of desperation and fear. "They're going to blame me, Tyler," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "You're the only one who can help me. You're just a kid, they'll go easy on you. But if they think I did it, I'll go to prison forever." For Tyler, the thought of losing his sister was unbearable. He didn't fully understand what she was asking, but he trusted her. And that trust would be his undoing. Kristi's betrayal wasn't born out of fear or panic, it was deliberate. She coached Tyler on what to say, rehearsing the story until it sounded convincing. When the police questioned her about Joey's murder, she played the role of the grieving widow, deflecting suspicion with ease. But when the focus shifted to Tyler, Kristi didn't flinch. She handed her little brother to the authorities, knowing full well the consequences he would face. For Kristi, Tyler was nothing more than a shield, a way to protect herself from the fallout of her actions. Tyler didn't realize it then, but he was just a pawn in Kristi's twisted game. Her betrayal cut deeper than any wound, leaving scars that would take years to heal. She had taken his love and loyalty and twisted them into weapons against him. And as Tyler sat in a cold jail cell that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had been abandoned by the person he trusted most. Kristi Fulgham's betrayal wasn't just a crime against her brother, it was a crime against love, trust, and family. But Tyler's story was far from over. The truth would eventually come to light, and Kristi's web of lies would unravel. But not before Tyler endured the fight of his life, battling against a system determined to see him as guilty. After his coerced confession, 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds found himself thrust into the cold machinery of the justice system, a system ill-equipped to handle the fragile psyche of a child manipulated into believing he was guilty of murder. What followed was a harrowing legal battle that pitted a young boy against the immense weight of the law, where every turn seemed to push Tyler further into the shadows of injustice. Tyler's nightmare began the moment he was led into the Starkville sheriff's office. It was supposed to be a routine conversation, a simple set of questions about Joey Fulgham's murder. At least, that's what Tyler believed. But once the door closed behind him, the atmosphere shifted. He was isolated, vulnerable, and terrified. Without his mother or a lawyer present, the detectives began their relentless questioning. At just 13 years old, Tyler was no match for their tactics. They framed their questions as statements, their tone growing sharper with every word. "We know you were there, Tyler," one detective said, leaning forward. "Kristi told us everything." Tyler froze. His sister's name was a lifeline and a noose all at once. When they told him she was in danger, that she could face the death penalty, Tyler's instincts kicked in, not to protect himself, but to protect her. The confession that followed was a carefully constructed lie, pieced together by Kristi and reinforced by the detectives. Tyler recounted how he supposedly held the gun, how he pulled the trigger. But his words lacked the detail of a first-hand account. He stumbled over key facts, describing events that didn't align with the crime scene evidence. Still, the detectives latched onto his confession as if it were a golden ticket, a way to close the case quickly and cleanly. To them, Tyler was no longer a scared boy. He was a murderer. When Tyler's trial began, the prosecution wasted no time painting him as a cold-blooded killer. They clung to his confession like a lifeline, ignoring its glaring inconsistencies. "This young man," the prosecutor declared, pointing directly at Tyler, "is not the innocent child you see before you. He is capable of murder, and he confessed to it." The jury listened intently, their eyes flicking between the prosecutor and Tyler, who sat quietly at the defense table. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, his gaze fixed on the floor. He looked more like a child being scolded in school than someone accused of taking a life. Tyler's court-appointed attorney was no match for the prosecution. Lacking the resources and experience needed to challenge the confession or investigate alternative theories, the defense struggled to build a case. There were moments when Tyler's innocence seemed obvious, like when the defense highlighted the lack of gunpowder residue on Tyler's hands or the fact that his physical size made it improbable for him to have committed the crime. But these arguments were drowned out by the weight of the confession. To the jury, it was damning evidence, a black and white statement of guilt. And Tyler, with his soft voice and childlike demeanor, seemed incapable of defending himself. After deliberating for hours, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty of murder. The sentence was shocking: life in prison without the possibility of parole until Tyler reached the age of 65. For Tyler, it was a punishment he couldn't fully comprehend. At 13, he had barely lived, yet his future had been stripped away. As he was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, his mother's cries echoed in his ears. He couldn't even look back at her, too ashamed of what he believed he had done. But Tyler's story didn't end there. In the years that followed, his mother and a new legal team, led by attorney Jim Wade, refused to give up. They pored over every detail of the case, searching for cracks in the prosecution's narrative. They found them in abundance, starting with the confession, which was riddled with inconsistencies, and ending with the testimony of an uncertified pathologist whose credibility was questionable at best. For Tyler, this marked the beginning of a long and grueling fight for his freedom. The justice system had failed Tyler Edmonds in every conceivable way. It had ignored the vulnerabilities of a child, relied on faulty evidence, and prioritized a quick conviction over the pursuit of truth. But Tyler's story wasn't over yet. His legal battle was far from finished, and the truth about what really happened that fateful night was finally beginning to emerge. After years of being trapped in the shadows of injustice, Tyler Edmonds' case finally found the light it so desperately needed. The fight for his freedom had reached a crucial turning point, a point where truth, perseverance, and the resilience of those who believed in him collided to expose the lies and manipulations that had stolen his childhood. Jim Wade and his team had taken on Tyler's case with one goal: to uncover the truth. Unlike Tyler's initial defense, Wade's approach was meticulous. He began by revisiting every piece of evidence, questioning every witness, and analyzing every misstep in the original trial. One glaring issue was the confession. Wade knew it was coerced, but proving that in court required more than just pointing fingers. He enlisted psychologists and child behavior experts to explain why children, especially those like Tyler, were so vulnerable to manipulation. The team also focused on the physical evidence, or rather, the lack of it. How could a 13-year-old boy, inexperienced with firearms, commit such a precise crime? Why was there no gunpowder residue on his hands? And why did Kristi's story change so drastically with each retelling? These were the questions Wade planned to bring to the courtroom. Kristi Fulgham was no longer just Tyler's sister. She was now a convicted murderer, sitting on death row for her role in Joey Fulgham's death. During Tyler's original trial, Kristi had been the prosecution's star witness. Her testimony was a web of lies designed to shift the blame onto her younger brother. But Wade was ready to dismantle that narrative. He uncovered new witnesses, including Tyler's estranged father, who revealed shocking details about Kristi's motives. She had openly discussed killing Joey, driven by the promise of a life insurance payout and her desire to escape a failing marriage. Wade's team also presented letters Kristi had written from prison, where she hinted at her manipulation of Tyler. These letters, paired with her refusal to testify during Tyler's retrial, painted a clear picture of her guilt. Her silence spoke volumes, and it was a silence that echoed through the courtroom. The physical evidence was perhaps the most damning part of the prosecution's case against itself. Tyler's confession detailed a sequence of events that didn't align with the crime scene. Forensic experts testified that the angle of the gunshot and the distance from which it was fired required precision and strength beyond what a 13-year-old could realistically achieve. Furthermore, there were no fingerprints, no DNA, and no gunpowder residue linking Tyler to the crime. One expert in particular delivered a bombshell revelation: the trajectory of the bullet suggested that Joey Fulgham had been shot while lying down, contradicting Tyler's confession that Joey was standing when he was killed. This single detail unraveled the prosecution's entire case, proving that Tyler's version of events was fabricated. When Tyler took the stand during his retrial, the courtroom fell silent. This was his chance to tell his story, his truth. "I didn't kill Joey," Tyler said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I confessed because I thought it would protect my sister. I didn't understand what I was doing. I just wanted to help her." His words were raw, filled with the pain of years lost and the betrayal he had endured. But they were also filled with resolve. Tyler spoke about his love for Kristi, his confusion during the interrogation, and the fear that had driven him to say things that weren't true. The jury listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to sympathy. For the first time, they saw Tyler not as a defendant, but as a victim. The verdict was a moment of redemption. After years of suffering, Tyler Edmonds was finally free. The jury had seen through the lies, the manipulations, and the failures of the system. They had seen the truth. As the courtroom erupted in applause, Tyler turned to his mother. Their embrace was a testament to the power of perseverance and the bond of unconditional love. For Tyler, freedom wasn't just the absence of prison walls, it was the reclaiming of his innocence and his future. Kristi Fulgham's silence during the trial spoke louder than any words she could have offered. While Tyler walked free, Kristi remained on death row, her actions forever marking her as the true villain of the story. Her betrayal was the catalyst for Tyler's suffering, and her legacy was one of manipulation and destruction. Tyler Edmonds' journey was far from over, but his fight for freedom had laid the foundation for a brighter future. With his innocence restored, he turned his attention to helping others, advocating for juvenile justice reform and the rights of children in the legal system. His story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a reminder that, even in the darkest moments, the truth has the power to prevail. After his release, Tyler Edmonds faced a world that was both familiar and foreign. The freedom he had fought for was finally his, but reclaiming a life that had been stolen from him was no simple task. At just 18 years old, Tyler was starting over. The years he had spent in prison had robbed him of milestones, school dances, friendships, and the carefree moments of adolescence. The world outside had moved on, but Tyler was determined to catch up, even if it meant rebuilding his life piece by piece. Life outside prison walls was not without its challenges. Tyler had to adjust to a society that viewed him through the lens of his past. Despite being exonerated, the stigma of his conviction lingered. He struggled to find his footing academically, working tirelessly to earn his GED. The years he had missed in school left gaps in his education, but Tyler refused to let that deter him. Each page he read, each problem he solved, was a step toward reclaiming the future he had once dreamed of. Finding work was another hurdle. Many employers were hesitant to hire someone with Tyler's history, despite his innocence. But with persistence and the unwavering support of his mother, Tyler eventually secured small jobs, working his way toward stability. Beyond the practical challenges of rebuilding his life, Tyler faced an even greater task: healing from the emotional scars of his ordeal. For years, he had carried the weight of betrayal not just from the justice system, but from his own sister. Kristi's manipulation had shattered the trust Tyler once had in her, leaving him to grapple with feelings of anger, sadness, and confusion. Therapy became a cornerstone of Tyler's healing journey. With the help of counselors, he began to process the trauma he had endured. Slowly, he learned to forgive not just Kristi, but also himself for the guilt he had carried for years. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it allowed Tyler to release the pain that had once consumed him. Rather than letting his experience define him, Tyler chose to use it as a platform for change. He became an advocate for juvenile justice reform, speaking out about the dangers of coercion and the need for better protections for children in the legal system. Tyler worked closely with organizations that supported wrongfully convicted individuals, sharing his story to raise awareness about the flaws within the justice system. His words carried weight, not just because of his experience, but because of the hope and resilience he embodied. Tyler also dedicated himself to mentoring young people, hoping to steer them away from paths that could lead to trouble. He shared his story not to evoke pity, but to inspire others to believe in their own strength and potential. Through it all, Tyler's mother remained his unwavering source of support. She had fought tirelessly for his freedom, sacrificing her own well-being to ensure that justice was served. Their relationship, once strained by the pressures of Tyler's incarceration, had grown stronger with time. Together, they found solace in simple moments, shared meals, quiet evenings, and the unspoken understanding that they had survived the unimaginable. Tyler Edmonds' journey was one of unimaginable hardship, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. His story serves as a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and injustice, there is always a path forward. It may not be easy, and it may not be quick, but with determination, hope, and the support of those who believe in us, it is possible to rebuild and to thrive. If Tyler's story moved you, consider sharing it to help spread awareness about the flaws in our justice system. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more stories of resilience and hope. Together, we can shed light on the injustices that so many continue to face.